So, you began this discussion. What are the mistakes people make when they speak? If you have a message that you want to get out, you need to know the very first question always, who is the audience? Now, here's your test. And this is because I'm going to give you some call to actions throughout our discussion. Look at an email that you wrote to a customer or a client or a prospect. Take a pen, print out that email that you wrote, and look at the first two paragraphs and circle how many I's and how many U's. Now, I's include me, mine, our. U's are you, your, you'll, you've, any of those personal pronouns, and just count them. If you're like most people, because I, as we said earlier, is the most frequently used word in the entire English language, one letter. And yet, as Susan said, there's that 5 letters that you need to be thinking about, WIIFM, which means it should be about them. So you could rewrite that letter and eliminate every I, me, or mine. Actually, you could write a 10-page letter and never use I one time once you see the power of putting you into that message. So just think about your emails. How do they begin? Susan, I need to know a couple of things about the podcast. I need to know who's going to be on your podcast. Another thing I need to know, how long are we going to talk? Another thing okay, that's how most people write an email. So what if we just took that email that I just made up and said, Susan, your podcast is important. Your listeners are tuning in because they're messengers with a mission and they want to get a lot out of this. So how would you describe your typical listener to make sure that this message ties in to them? Another thing that would be important, how long do you want this discussion to go? I said basically exactly the same thing, but notice there was no I.
That is the email that I got from you.
Well, you got to practice what you preach or you're a hypocrite.
That's right.
So as you're listening to this message, I want you to see who we're talking to. And there's one other thing about that. It's singular. Now, Susan, you and I are in a group of very experienced people at Genius Network.
Yes, we
are. So I think you will know this name, but as you're watching this podcast, you might not know who Arthur Godfrey is or was. Susan, do you know who Arthur Godfrey was?
I think so.
Take a guess.
The name is very familiar. I'm trying to picture, was he on TV or on radio? But where was he?
Radio.
He
was the number one radio broadcaster in America, year after year. His show was always number one. And I remember as a young man listening to an interview where he was being asked, Arthur, how is it possible every year you're named the number one broadcaster out of all of these people on the radio? And the radio, of course, was much more used than television in those long days ago, back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, when he spoke. And he said these words, my secret is this. I talk to just one person, and their name is you. So he didn't say, so all of you out there in radio land. Now, I know many of you are probably in your car, and some of you might be at home. He never did that. He said, wherever you are, maybe in your car, maybe you're at home, or maybe you're at work. Wherever you are listening to this message, you're going to get some great ideas today. We have some wonderful guests that you're going to enjoy listening to. So that's another assignment for you. Take away the plural. The common expression today for people making presentations, you guys. Well, I don't know if you've noticed, Susan, you're not a guy.
That's true.
Yeah. So we should never say you guys. And the other reason is you're making it plural. So if you're at a live event and the speaker's on the stage and says, now you guys out there, the audience can think, oh, I think he's talking to this guy over here or that lady over there. But when you say you, it's directed at you. and you can embrace everybody in a singular way. So as an example, as you're listening, you might be a messenger with a mission that isn't as clear to you as you want it to be. Or perhaps you have spent a lot of time perfecting that message and it is crystal clear to you. So wherever you are on that scale, where it's not clear or it's very clear, this idea would be helpful for you. So I just covered everybody. Or you could say something like this. You might be new to your career. Maybe you've just started your business, or maybe you've been in it for decades, 40 or 50 years. So whether you have a lot of experience or not much at all, these ideas will help you. You could be a man, or maybe you're a woman. We just got everybody. Whatever you are, you're a human being. And you think that's what makes you special. So that's the power of using you. So as you go ahead, Susan.
What I was going to say is, again, the similarities between writing and speaking are so similar because they have to tie in. I mean, if you have a message, you're doing it either by writing or by speaking. And one of the biggest issues I find with clients that I'm working with is they want their message to reach everybody. And so using that broad stroke rather than tying the writing in so that the person who's reading the book feels like the writer is speaking directly to them is very similar to what you're talking about.
Yes.
It's clarity, isn't it? It's having clarity.
And that's what you need to have. If you have a message that you want to get out, you need to know the very first question always. And before I give you that question, I'm going to illustrate it with a little example that Susan has no idea what's going to happen. But she's a smart lady. She can do it. So make believe you're sitting there with Susan and you're going to answer the questions because I can't hear what you're thinking right now. So Susan, just imagine, because in the introduction you said, imagine if our listener to this podcast got an invitation to talk to 75 people tomorrow, would they say yes? Well, you're going to get that invitation. And we're going to have you in front of 75 people tomorrow in a hotel right near where you live. And the subject they want you to talk about is safe driving, how to be a safe driver. So can you quickly, off the top of your head, pick out a couple of things that you should do or not do to be a safe driver? Go. Tell me what you would talk. Just give me the bullet points.
Be aware of the rules and the speed limits.
Okay. Obey the speed limit. Know what it is. Good. What else?
Be an offensive driver. Watch what's happening around you. Don't
defensive
be
or offensive, did you say?
I guess it would be defensive.
Defensive, yeah.
Defensive.
Okay.
Be aware of other drivers,
okay,
so that you're not hyper focused just on the road, but you have a broad view of what's happening around you.
Okay.
Wear your seatbelt.
Seatbelt. Okay. What should we be doing while we're driving? Could we be doing other things?
Oh, absolutely not. No texting. No cell phone use. Yes.
All right. So now as you're listening to this, would you say Susan's hit the points that you would say? Don't speed, pay attention to what's going around, maybe signal before you change lanes, don't text, don't drink, all of that. That's completely off track. I'm sorry, you have failed the test. Now, the reason is, if you had begun with the most important question any messenger on a mission needs to ask when they're going to make a presentation, which is the first question I asked you, who is the audience?
Oh, yes.
So now I just set this up. Tomorrow, you're going to be 75 people in a hotel near you up in the Pacific Northwest, and you're going to talk about safe driving. Joel, I'd love to do it. Now ask me the question, who is
your audience?
Oh, they are NASCAR drivers. And NASCAR has been having accidents on the track, and they want you to come in and talk about some safety points. So, Susan, let's review your message so far. Okay, obey the speed limit. So we're not going to speed anymore as NASCAR drivers. Yeah. We're going to make sure that we're not texting. You think at 160 miles an hour, they're doing a lot of texting and drinking? Do you think they forgot their seatbelts? No, nothing was relevant. Now, the reason I did that with you, Susan, everybody says the same thing. So here's another tool for you to think of. Before you make any kind of a presentation or write anything, you must start with, who is the audience?
Yes.
And once you knew that, in this case, you probably would have said, Joel, I don't think I can speak at that event because I don't really know how race car drivers could drive safely at those speeds. They probably need another speaker.
Yes.
Okay, but that's the key. So, you began this discussion. What are the mistakes people make when they speak? That's it. They don't know who the audience is.
Mhm.
And they talk about things that aren't relevant. And you don't have to be dynamic. You don't have to have energy. You don't have to have humor, stories, any of that. If what you're saying is important and relevant to the people listening.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.